Saludos, it's your host, Gabe Morales, continuing with our series on Mexican drug cartels. Today we're going to cover the Juarez Cartel and Sonora Cartels and describe how these two groups are remotely connected. As I stated at the start of this series, I know that there are a lot of videos out there in both Spanish and English on drug cartels, and I've noticed that they use a lot of clips from other people's videos, and many use some very fancy video graphics, also taken from other sources. I don't use a lot of fancy gimmicks here. I try to focus on accurate content, not visual eye candy. My videos on drug cartels do sometimes use pictures given to me from other sources, but many of them are my own. I also conduct personal interviews with subject matter experts that cannot be seen on any other channel, and this video is no different. Let me start off by describing a key individual who was involved since the early days with several drug trafficking organizations. This would be Juan Jose Esparragosa Moreno, also known as El Azul, the Blue One. He was associated with the Guadalajara cartel in the 1970s, along with other drug kingpins in Mexico. Following its disintegration in the 1980s, he went on to be involved with the Juarez cartel and Sinaloa cartel, and was a liaison with many other cartels. After Felix Gallardo and his henchmen were locked up in the brutal murder of Enrique Kiki Camarena, Felix Gallardo divided up his drug kingdom into different territories and delegated control to certain individuals that he worked with previously who were part of his network. In 1993, Esparragosa Moreno joined the Juarez cartel, along with its leader, Amado Carrillo Fuentes, who, as I've stated previously, was the nephew of Ernesto Don Neto Fonseca Carrillo. The Juarez cartel used sophisticated technology and large aircraft. It is said that they even use 747s to smuggle narcotics into the United States. The cartel had a close relationship with the Cali cartel in Colombia, as well as with Pablo Escobar of the Medellin cartel. The Juarez cartel used a huge network of narcotraficantes and gang members to smuggle their drugs into urban areas like Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, Houston, Denver, Phoenix, and even as far away as New York City. Some sources list Amado Carrillo Fuentes as being born on December 17, 1956. Others say that it was much earlier. As a young man, Amado was sent by his uncle to Ojinaga, Chihuahua, which was in the middle of the desert, to oversee cocaine shipments for his uncle into the Juarez-El Paso corridor and other entry ports along the U.S.-Mexican border. Carrillo Fuentes became the ruler of Chihuahua, in particular the plaza on the El Paso-Juarez border. He was most active between 1984 to 1986. This was at the start of the crack cocaine epidemic. Carrillo worked with the Arellano Felix organization of Tijuana, as well as Chapo Guzman's Sinaloa cartel, even the Beltran Leyva organization, who are also from Sinaloa. During his tenure, Carrillo built up a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. It is estimated he made at least $25 billion during his career. But due to heat by American authorities, Amado underwent cosmetic surgery to change his appearance, and he died on July 4th, 1997, at Santa Monica Hospital, located in Mexico City, due to medical complications. Two of Carrillo Fuentes' bodyguards were present when this operation started, and they were appalled and angered at the loss of their boss, who also made them a lot of money. On November 7th, 1997, almost exactly 4 months after Amado Carrillo Fuentes died on the operation table, two of the surgeons who were involved in the operation were found dead, encased in concrete steel drums, with their bodies showing signs of torture. Carrillo was given a large and lavish funeral in Sinaloa, and in 2006, the governor of Sonora asked the federal government to tear down his mausoleum that looked more like a church mansion. Amado's brother, Vicente, aka El Viceroy, took over the cartel after Amado's death, but he was described as a frequent drug user and his behavior was often erratic, so many people do not trust him. When Amado died, a brief turf war occurred in Juarez over leadership for the cartel, but Vicente would emerge victorious after defeating the Munoz Tabelero brothers for control of the organization. Vicente kept ties to El Azul, as his brother previously did. He also kept several of his brother's key lieutenants, such as El Chucky Hernandez, who was a former police officer. But the cartel remained in turmoil, as Vicente was not considered the force that his brother was. This created a large power vacuum in the Mexican underworld. The relationship with the Carrillo Fuentes clan of the Juarez cartel continued to be unstable, especially at the end of the 1990s and into the 2000s. And in 2001, after the escape of Chapo Guzman from prison, he took advantage of this weakness, and Sinaloa cartel ambassadors and sicarios started invading Juarez to fight for control over that corridor. During this time, it is believed that power was shared by Vicente and his then number 2 guy, Ricardo Garcia Urquiza, who was arrested in November 2005. In 2008, over 200 murders occurred just in the first 3 months of that year, and it appeared that the war between Sinaloa and the Juarez cartel was back on. Mexican President Calderon sent in troops to Ciudad Juarez to help calm the violence. And in 2014, Vicente was arrested by Mexican Army and Federales in Torreon, Coahuila, an area once dominated by revolutionary Pancho Villa, as we stated in the first episode, and later on controlled by the Gulf Cartel. Vicente then was sent to Mexico City, where he was incarcerated, and then transferred to several federal institutions in Mexico. In September 2021, a Mexican court sentenced him to 28 years in prison. Meanwhile, Amado's son and Vicente's nephew, Vicente Carrillo Leva, who was born in Mexico City and lived a life of luxury, had also been involved in the family business in spite of his father's wishes that he not become involved. His father even sent him away to Europe to study in some of the best universities in the world, in Switzerland and Spain, but his son paid no attention. He was arrested by Mexican police in April 2009, but was subsequently acquitted of money laundering charges, although possession of illegal firearms kept him in prison. He ended up being convicted in U.S. court, and after paying a $16,000 fine, was released in December 2010 to the custody of Mexican police on new money laundering charges. It is believed that he was released by U.S. authorities because he had informed on his own cartel, as well as other drug lords, in particular El Chapo of the Sinaloa Cartel. As I stated previously, the Juarez cartel used street gang members, as this former El Cerezo prison official from Chihuahua tells us. There is less control over the cartels today.
Y más grupos. Entonces, lo que ha generado una violencia extrema es la pelea.
What they're doing is creating violence and fighting over the point of drug sales.
Entonces, sale un líder con recursos y pelea
one leader will fight another
contra el
leader
otro líder
to take over his drug network.
Esa violencia
The
se
violence
traslada
translates
a que
into eliminating
para
the
eliminar
competition.
a esa
They kill
competencia
them in a very violent manner
matan
and
de
kill
una
their whole
manera muy
family,
violenta
women and
a toda la
children.
familia.
They try to
Mujeres,
completely wipe them out.
niños, todo. Destruyen toda esa, no nada más al que está vendiendo la droga o el que es el líder de esa plaza, sino a toda su familia completa.
It is
Una
terrorism.
especie de
We
terror,
have the
¿no?
example
De terror
here in
o de
Chihuahua.
narcoterror. Y bueno, y entonces tenemos el ejemplo, y recordando la historia, aquí en Chihuahua era el cártel de Juárez con Amado Carrillo, el Señor de los Cielos, y era un
There was the
cártel
Cartel de
muy
Juarez
famoso
under
y
Amado
muy
Carrillo,
grande, ¿no?
the Lord of the
A
Skies.
nivel México.
He led a very
Y
famous
tenía una
cartel
fuerza
operating at a
tremenda
high
ese
level in
cártel
Mexico.
y su
This
brazo
cartel
armado que
was a
era la
tremendous
línea,
force with their
así
armed
se conocía,
enforcers.
el brazo armado de la línea. Y en aquel entonces, estoy hablando allá por los noventas, en los años
La
noventas,
Linea.
las pandillas
I'm talking
conocidas
about
como
the
aztecas
1990s. And the
eran en
Aztecas
México,
came in.
eran utilizados solamente
In
para el
Mexico,
narcomenudeo y el
the
narcomenudeo
barrio
y también
Aztecas were mostly used
como
as
mulas para
runners
pasar
and drug
la
mules,
chiva, la heroína a
smuggling
Estados
heroin.
Unidos. Y era todo lo que hacían, es decir, no tenían un nivel importante dentro de la organización.
They did not operate
Sí,
at a
sino
high level within the
eran realmente
organization.
trabajadores
They were just
desechables.
low-level
Esto
workers.
a nivel prisión, si lo vemos a nivel de la pinta, del cerezo, de la prisión, los aztecas tenían
But
un
in
papel
prison,
primordial
they
dentro
dominated
eran
the
los que
inmate
dominaban
population.
la pinta,
They were
eran
number
los meros
one.
meros en la pinta. Y los mexicles eran un grupito pequeño que siempre
The
estaban por
Mexicles were a
debajo de
smaller
los
gang
aztecas.
at a
Y
level under
esto
the
a través del
Aztecas.
tiempo evolucionó. Evolucionó porque entonces resulta que viene la guerra del crimen organizado y se pelea el cártel de Juárez con el cártel de Sinaloa, y entonces los
Then the war
mejitles,
came
ahí
between
es
the Juarez
donde se
Cartel
hacen del
and the
lado del
Sinaloa
cártel de
Cartel.
Sinaloa, o el
The
cártel de
Cartel de
Sinaloa
Sinaloa
los toma como soldados y
used the
entonces
Mexicles
agarran
as
fuerza.
soldiers. Eventually, with all the problems that the Carrillo Fuentes family was having, La Linea seemed to operate more on their own, but still battled the Sinaloa cartel. La Linea even hired female sicarias, assassins, to often lure targets from the other side, that being Sinaloa, and then kill them. Juan Pablo Ledesma was only born in 1987, but was considered to be the leader of La Linea. His ally was Eduardo Tablas Revelo, who was head of the Barrios Tecas Juarez faction, and he was put on the FBI's most wanted list in 2018. To make matters more complicated, Los Artistas Asesinos, artist assassins, or AA, broke away from their longtime allies, los who worked with the Sinaloa cartel. The Artistas Asesinos then started working more on their own. Los Mexicles, or Mexicles, as some people pronounce it, also broke into the factions. And so it is very messy and very confusing in Juarez today with all these changing alliances.
Y también tenemos
We also have
el
the division of
cártel, la
cartels
división de cárteles.
that
Tenemos
we have operating called the Cartel
en primer
Jalisco
lugar al cártel de
Nueva
Jalisco,
Generacion,
Nueva
who
Generación,
have been
con
very
mucha
active,
actividad y es uno de
and
los
they are
carteles
one of
más
the
fuertes
biggest, strongest
en
cartels.
México. El de
Then we have the
Sinaloa.
Cartel de
El cártel de
Sinaloa,
Sinaloa es
which is
otro de los
also very
cárteles que
powerful.
es muy... Y tenemos el
And
cártel
we
del
have the
noroeste.
Northeast
Los
Cartel
antes eran los Zetas, el
and
cártel del
Gulf
Golfo,
Cartel.
ahora es el cártel que se puede decir más
We have
pequeño,
some smaller
como el
cartels
cártel
like the Cartel
actual
de
de Caborca,
Caborca,
¿no? El cártel de Caborca, fundado por cuando fue
started by
liberado, después
Rafael
crea su
Caro
propio cártel,
Quintero
que es el cártel
when
de
he was
Caborca,
running free.
que tiene
The
influencia
Cartel de
más al
Caborca
norte
has its
del
most
país,
influence in the northern part of the
incluyendo
country,
Chihuahua, que es donde
including
yo
Chihuahua,
radico, donde yo
where I
vivo.
live.
Con
We
mucha
have with the
actividad,
cartels a lot of
pero con
activity
mucha actividad
and
en
an
forma
uncountable
de
amount of drugs on the
narcomenudeo, es
streets.
decir, plazas,
So they are
por
fighting for the
plazas,
plazas, where an uncountable
se puede decir
amount
que
of drug
de un
sales
nivel de
are controlled.
narcomenudeo.
Meanwhile, as described in the previous episode on the Guadalajara cartel, the Sonora cartel was started by the Caro Quintero brothers, mainly run by Miguel, while his brother Rafael was locked up for his participation in the homicide of DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena. At the age of 16, he left Sinaloa and settled in Caborca, Sonora, where he worked raising livestock as his father did. 2 years later, he worked as a truck driver back in Sinaloa. He transported beans and corn before deciding to leave his home again to work in Chihuahua and help coordinate with Rancho Buffalo in Chihuahua and other operations under the Guadalajara cartel at the direction of Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo and Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo. He learned how to grow marijuana, harvest it, and market it at a ranch owned by his brother, Jorge Luis. As stated in the Guadalajara episode, Rafael had fled to Costa Rica, but was soon captured and then imprisoned. After serving 28 years in prison, Rafael was freed in August 2013 after a state court concluded that he was given an unfair trial. But the day after his release, U.S. officials pressured the Mexican government to recapture him, and the Mexican federal court issued a new warrant for his arrest. And like I said, when the Guadalajara cartel fell apart, he helped run the Sonora cartel while directing his brother Miguel and other brothers and associates. And until recently, the Sonora faction was believed to have been defunct. But after Rafael was released from prison, it was discovered that he had restarted his cartel that was also known as the Caborca cartel, using individuals like El Neto and other supporters to restart the organization. Like a phoenix from the ashes, it rose with a new name. In June 2020, it was revealed that the Sinaloa cartel's Los Salazar affiliate was a major figure in the state of Sonora also. One Los Salazar hit squad leader, Edgar Alonso Villegas Saracen, aka El H1 or El Pirata, was killed in July of that year while he sat in a barber's chair in Hermosillo, Mexico. That same month, Juan Francisco Herrera Ortiz, aka El Brujo, was assassinated while driving with his wife and 4 children in Guayamos, Sonora. He was killed, as well as his wife and a daughter, in that incident. The Villegas Saracen family was believed to be the target of the Sinaloa cartel as payback for previous killings by the Cartel de Caborca. Caro Quintero lost his appeal to avoid extradition to the United States in March 2021, and he was captured, as shown in a previous episode, in July of that year. Recently, I saw the press citing Los Mexicles leader El Neto as working for the Sinaloa Cartel. This is incorrect, as our guest here clarifies.
Bueno, esto evolucionó ahora en estos tiempos, hablando del Neto y de la fuga del Neto y todo lo que hicieron. Es tanto así que
Then you
ahora
had a relationship
resulta que
between
los
El Neto
mexicles
of the
son el grupo
Mexicles
fuerte,
and Rafael
ya
Caro
no son
Quintero.
los aztecas ya es el
What
grupo
resulted was the
débil.
Mexicles
Así es.
became the
Y
dominating
entonces,
force.
esto evoluciona, porque ahorita, es decir,
Neto
los
of the
nuevos
Mexicles
mexicles
in
ahora
Ciudad
son parte
Juarez
del cártel de Caborca,
was part of
ya
the
no
new
del
Mexicles,
cártel de
and they
Sinaloa.
fight against the old
Entonces, es
Mexicles.
por eso que
The new
ellos se quieren
Mexicles
fugar del
operated
Cerezo,
under the Cartel de
porque
Caborca,
ellos temían por su
and the
vida.
old
Decían que iba a
Mexicles
ir un grupo a
operate under the Cartel
exterminarlos, un
de
grupo del
Sinaloa.
cártel de Sinaloa a matarlos. Y por eso es que ellos buscan la forma de salirse, de fugarse del Cerezo. Y lo hacen con esa violencia, ¿no?
El Neto escaped from prison, killing many officers during his escape, and he also killed 7 other inmates, believed to be enemies, before his crime partners freed 25 prisoners in a mass escape. Later on, it was found that many of these cells were considered VIP rooms, cell phones, nicely furnished, and special privileges given, as well as a lot of drugs were found, and weapons. There was even a cat found in El Cerezo prison after El Neto's capture and subsequent death that was found within the prison walls with their calling sign, Hecho en Mexico, made in Mexico, that was actually tattooed on the cat. A good friend of mine, as well as Mexican police experts and guests on the show, Pablo Cajigal de Angel and Guillermo Alberto Hidalgo Montes, was appointed by me to be the official Mexican representative for the International Latino Gang Investigators Association, known by its acronym ILGIA. This was Chihuahua Comandante Francisco Javier Cisneros Prieto, who was falsely incarcerated while he was still in this role because he stood up to the cartels, and maybe because of his close relationship with us. He was falsely accused by his detractors of having ties to a rival drug trafficking organization, and it never was clear to me, but I think the Juarez cartel guys were saying that he was helping out Sinaloa. All purely political charges, he told me, and he insisted that he is totally innocent and would clear his name. After he is finally let out, when there was no evidence to support these ridiculous charges, he continued to go after the cartels, and he lost his life for his heroic efforts and was killed in front of his home in 2016. He is greatly missed by all of us on both sides of the border. He was one of the good cops. There are good cops in Mexico. We should never forget that. And many of them have lost their lives fighting the good fight. We will continue our coverage of Mexican drug trafficking organizations and major players in those cartels in our next videos. For now, this is Gabe Morales signing off. Gangsters, cops, and politicians.